Good morning. I'm Loretta Randolph of the Weatherhead School of Management, MPOD and MOD Alumni Association, and we're here today talking with Dr. Melvin Smith, Professor of Organizational Behavior. Good morning, Dr. Smith.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. As you know, we are collecting stories, interviewing all of the faculty and collecting stories about you and your career and your work, because all of you are seminal thinkers in the field. And once we complete the interviews, we'll give those back as a gift to the department. So we have those stories memorialized and what you've contributed to not only the school but the world.
Great. That sounds fabulous.
And I'd like to start to have you talk a little bit about how you came into the field and how you came to CASE. We all know that at some point in our lives, when we're doing what some people would call right livelihood, we know we've made the right decisions and that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So can you talk to me a little bit about what brought you to the field and what brought you to CASE?
I will. I can share that. It's a little bit of a long story and a winding road, but if you have time. And I do, first of all, feel that I am in the right place. And since I've been here, felt like, man, I made the right decision. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to do in life, and I'm where I'm supposed to be in life. But I can't say that it was an intentional journey. And I set out to say, this is where I'm going to be. This is the field I'm going to be in. It's interesting, however, I started out being very interested in human behavior, broadly speaking, in high school. When I took my first psychology course, I got so interested in that I decided, hey, that's what I wanted to study in school. So I enrolled in Purdue University years ago as an undergraduate to study psychology. But after my first year on campus at Purdue, interacted with various faculty members, various counselors, various friends, and became convinced that I needed to be in the business school instead of the field of psychology, studying. So I switched my major, ended up switching over to the business school, graduating with a degree in accounting, which is 180 degrees in the opposite direction of where I was going with psychology, and started my career as an accountant. After a very short time working as an accountant, I realized that really wasn't the exact fit for me and who I was. So when I went back to school to get a graduate degree, to get an MBA, shifted a little bit more toward the behavioral space, but really focused on marketing. So I got an MBA in marketing, focused really on consumer behavior, and then spent about 10 years in the corporate world working with organizations in the marketing field and sales and marketing management roles. And it was over that course of 10 years working with a variety of companies, IBM, Pepsi-Cola, H.J. Heinz, et cetera, that I just saw things happening over and over and over again in these organizations that just perplexed me and intrigued me about how people behaved and why organizations didn't see certain things and did see other things. So I became fascinated with that and the consistency I saw across different organizations and certain patterns of behavior. And really that and other things made me want to say, I want to go study this. So at that point, I made a shift and said, okay, I'm going to leave the corporate world. And I applied to and got accepted into a PhD program at the University of Pittsburgh in organizational behavior. So it wasn't an intentional pathway that led me there. But as I look back, in hindsight, I can see the threads. So it was always about behavior in some way that was really drawing human behavior. And at the point that I got into the field, there was this interest and desire to know more about organizational behavior specifically. And then from there, fast forward, so I got my PhD in organizational behavior at the University of Pittsburgh. More of a traditional organizational behavior kind of approach and department, if you will. But given that I had spent 15 years approximately by that point in the corporate world, I had an interest in joining a faculty that wasn't just about organizational behavior purely and just the studying of kind of what happens in organizations and with individuals, but really being in a place that truly appreciated and was deeply wedded in the practice of what happens in organizations as well. So really moving into the organization development space as well as just the organizational behavior. And when I met the faculty at CASE and saw the rich history of CASE as a department and the Weatherhead kind of faculty and just really being the creators of organizational behavior as a field, I was just drawn to that. When I met people and saw this notion of this blending of scholarship and practice, I knew that was the space that I wanted to be in. So,
Thank you. Yeah, many folks in this field have had paths similar to yours, and I think that's a good thing, because I think we do have to blend.
Right.
We have to blend both, and that leads to the next question. Is you've done some very important work, and much of it has been done here. And you started to talk about what drew you to this department, but when did you know that your work was having an impact? When was it, and how did you know that you were having an impact?
Yeah, so initially when I came here, like my dissertation work was really in the area of relationships and organizations, broadly speaking, but more specifically looking at social networks and social capital and kind of what we call social exchange relationships and organizations, relationships between individuals and their boss or leader, relationships between individuals and their team members, as well as relationships between individuals and their organization as a whole. So I was doing work in that space, looking at how those workplace relationships influence a number of attitudes and behaviors, and kind of doing research and kind of teaching in that space. But after getting here, I fairly quickly got involved in the work with Richard Boyatzis on emotional intelligence, and even more importantly for me, the intentional change process, really helping individuals think about how to make sustained, desired changes in their lives. So my initial entree into that work was to link the work that I was doing around relationships with that change process and the role that relationships that we have with others play in our ability to make sustained change in our lives. And where I really began to see the impact of the work that I was doing was really focusing on that intentional change, helping people recognize and realize that they can envision the future that they want to have for themselves in an ideal fashion, unconstrained by views imposed by others, and that there's a process and a mechanism by which they can actually make those things happen for themselves. So as I began to do that work and see people just get excited and light up around this whole notion of being able to craft this vision for their future and then to put a process in place to move toward the attainment of that vision, that's where I really began to see the impact. And to this day, of all the different types of work that I do here, it's that work around helping individuals kind of articulate that ideal future for themselves and then move in the direction of attaining that I feel has that greatest impact.
So when you see that wonderment and light bulb go off, that still energizes you?
Yeah, that's it. It does. I mean, I spent 15 years in the corporate world, but as an academic, the research is great, but being in that classroom or coaching an individual or whatever the environment may be, when you see that light bulb go off, as you described it, and somebody gets it, and you see the heads nodding, and you see that wheels in motion of change, and say, okay, I'm literally going to change something in my life based upon what we just discussed here. That's what kind of sets me off or lights me up. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about what drew you to the department. Can you speak a little more about what it is it about the department that has helped you in your work? What is it about the environment? What is it about your colleagues that keeps you here?
Yeah. So the initial attraction was, well, at the time for me, coming from a more traditional department, use the word traditional, organizational behavior, really kind of just studying contemporary topics in organizational behavior. What drew me here was the deep history and roots that this department had, again, even creating the field. And then some of the big kind of cornerstones of the work being done at that time. I looked at it at the time as kind of these three pillars of things that really drew me here, the work at the individual level on emotional intelligence that Richard Boyatzis was doing, the work at the more macro level that David Cooper-Ryder and Ron Fry were doing, and the work in the experiential learning space and Dave Cole was doing. That, and then the way that other faculty members like Diana Bill-Moria were contributing into that space really drew me, or kind of caught my attention initially and made me attracted to kind of want to at least check out what was going on here. Then when I came in and met the people, all the rest of the faculty as well, and then saw the work that they were doing and saw that the impact and saw that the threads between the work were so powerful. And again, for me, one of the most compelling things was it wasn't just ivory tower thinking or theoretical work that they were doing. The work was definitely rooted in research and theory, but it was the fact that there was a clear intention to apply that work in meaningful ways to impact the lives of individuals and organizations and societies more broadly speaking. So that marrying of just phenomenal thinking in these key spaces with the actual practical application of that to improve the lives of others was just a powerful formula. And I just said, wow, that's where I have to be. Yeah. And I wanted to be a part of that, to figure out how I could contribute to that thinking, number one, but then also continue to actively contribute to the sharing of that thinking, not just through the writing, but through the work with individuals and groups all over the world to kind of actually apply what we learned from the research.
Thanks. So you found an environment that let you thrive, is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what I've been doing here. I feel that I've been thriving, and that's a key driver of the work that I, along with Richard Boyatzis and Ellen Van Osten, the work we're doing on executive coaching now, that we focus on as well, is helping individuals not just survive in their organizational environments, but to truly thrive, right, and to live the lives that they want to live. Yeah.
Reflecting on and continuing in that vein, but reflecting on all of your experiences, both in the corporate world and the academic world, and research and practice, integrating those two. What are your hopes for the future of the field?
That's interesting. So, ideally speaking, one of my greatest aspirations and hopes for the field would be, so we focus on not just organization development here, but positive organization development. So one of the hopes I have is that framing takes hold in the field, and in organizations more broadly speaking, such that people don't just approach situations with this deficit view or mentality, and they look at the positive and the possibilities. So reframing the field more around possibilities than problems, and reframing what happens in organizations and change and movement and development organizations around, again, possibilities and opportunities rather than just close gaps or fix problems. Another thing that I would like to see for the field is to continue to shift toward this view of human flourishing as the priority. So even if you're talking about an organization, focusing first and foremost on how do we help individuals thrive and flourish, recognizing that if you can then do that, then there are practices you can put in place and things you can do to help the organizations be as effective as you'd like them to be, and to be as successful as you would like them to be. But to not focus on the organization first and look at people as just a means of achieving the organizational objectives, but instead look at how can we kind of create an environment where individuals flourish. And when that happens, just recognizing that organizations will benefit as a result. So I'd like to see the field continue to move in that in a way that appreciates and encourages human flourishing. And then the last thing, probably more practically speaking, I would like to see the field evolve to the point to where it's had the impact that individuals and organizations and various functions, so the OD function and the HR function when they exist in organizations are fabulous, and they do great work and kind of help organizations to be successful. But I would like to see, and I see a shift in this direction, but see a continued shift in this direction where every manager and every leader in the organization views it as something that they're responsible for doing, not something that they kind of relegate to the OD department who handles that stuff. But everyone views kind of their need to kind of help develop and nurture talent in the organization. Everyone views their responsibility as kind of helping to bring about positive change in small ways and large scale ways in organizations. So kind of shifting OD from being kind of more of a function that kind of handles all that stuff to something that everybody in the organization views as part of their responsibility, and who has the tools and the desire and the interest to apply those things to make life better for individuals, teams, and the organization as a whole.
Thank you. Last formal question, and then we're open to whatever else you'd like to say. How would you like your work to be remembered?
How would I like my work to be remembered? Interesting. So right now, most of the work that I do, or the lion's share of the work that I do, as I said, is in conjunction with Richard Boyatzis and Ellen Van Osten in the space of coaching. We have been doing work in that space for quite some time. In fact, we're working on a book right now that should be at about this time next year, probably sometime in August of 2019. and it's a particular view and an approach to coaching that through years and years of research now and years of practice and applying these things that we've learned through the research, we know helps people do just what we've been talking about, thrive, right? But it's a different view of coaching. It's a different approach to coaching. So one of the ways I'd like to be remembered is having been a part of a group that kind of reframed how people think about and look at and practice coaching, whether it's formal coaching or whether, as we like to describe it, just more general helping behavior of others. So be able to reframe that and have people help others in more meaningful ways, largely because of this approach and this view to coaching and helping that we've shared. So that's one of the ways. Another way is, as I said, one of the things that I got really involved in fairly early on in my time here in the department was working with Richard Boyatzis on this intentional change theory and model and approach to change, so helping people make sustained, desired change in their lives. So while I like to be remembered for kind of the research and the work that I've done, the coaching space and other things, I think for me personally, you talked about light bulb going up, but I, on a regular basis now, having taught in the MPOD program for a number of years, have students afterward who reach out to me with personal notes or emails talking about how what we talked about in class around, their change and their sustained change in their lives and their vision and how to make that happen, how that literally has changed their lives. So I think for me personally, how I'd like to be remembered is to just who have touched just a number of individuals in that way, so that people think back around their lives and their educational experiences, et cetera. They remember me as someone who, in some form or fashion, potentially changed the trajectory of their lives because of the things that we talked about in my course and the things that I had them reflect on and the way that I was able to connect with and engage with them on a personal level. And that's one of the things that for me is important. I am passionate about the stuff that we teach here and then the work that I do. And I think the students kind of feel that. So it's not like, I'm just going through the motions teaching the stuff that needs to be taught. Every time I teach it, even if it's my 100th time teaching a topic, it's still alive for me. I feel it in my heart, and I think they can kind of feel that emotion coming from me. So if I can be remembered as someone who has had that impact, who engaged someone in such a way that made them think about or do something differently with their lives because of what we talked about in class, then I think that's important to me. That will be meaningful for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Any other closing thoughts, comments, ahas that you'd like to share?
I feel blessed. If I had to think about one word to describe kind of how I feel about being a member of this department, I would have to say it's blessed. As I said, I didn't intentionally kind of draw out a career plan or map that would have landed me here. I can kind of draw semi-logical threads to the various decisions I made that led to this, but I couldn't say it was intentional at the time. But since I've been here, and I've been here for 16 years now, it doesn't feel like work because I feel like I'm in the ideal job or role. I'm in the ideal spot to be doing that work. I love what I do. I do it with a passion, and I'm just fortunate to be able to actually be paid for doing what I love to do. So I just feel blessed to be a part of this department and its rich history, and I just hope that I can, while I'm here, do my part to contribute to the legacy of this place that exists for years to come.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
And it was a great pleasure talking to you.
Great talking to you as well.
Thank you.